Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. In the shifting sands of American education, where new theories crash onto the shore every decade only to be washed away by the next wave of innovation, there is one philosophy that stands like a rock. It is the philosophy of the anchor. It is the philosophy of the root. It is conservatism. To understand conservatism in education, you have to start with a feeling. Imagine walking into an old library, the smell of dust and paper, the silence, the rows of books written by people who lived and died centuries ago. When you walk in there, you feel something. You feel small, but in a good way. You feel that you are stepping into a river of human wisdom that started long before you were born and will continue long after you are gone. The conservative educator looks at that library and says, "This is what school is for." While progressives, like John Dewey, want to use school to change society, and constructivists want to use school to let students build their own truth, the conservative believes the purpose of school is to preserve and transmit the best of what has already been known, said, and done. They believe that civilization is fragile. It is not a natural state. We are not born civilized. We are born as raw, impulsive, biological creatures. Civilization is a hard-won achievement, built brick by brick over thousands of years of trial, error, suffering, and triumph. The school is the institution we built to pass that achievement down to the next generation, to ensure that the chain is not broken. This isn't just about being old-fashioned. It is a deep philosophical conviction that we have a debt to the past, and that the future is safer when it is built on a solid foundation of proven tradition. Conservatism in education isn't a monolith. It actually has two distinct flavors, or cousins, that often sit at the same table but argue about the menu. These are perennialism and essentialism. To understand the conservative mind, you have to understand the difference between them. Perennialism is the high church version of conservatism. The word comes from perennial, meaning everlasting, returning year after year. Thinkers like Mortimer Adler and Robert Hutchins, who famously revamped the University of Chicago, argued that human nature doesn't change. A human being in 2024 has the same fears, hopes, loves, and questions as a human being in ancient Greece. We still wonder, what is justice? What is love? What is the good life? Does God exist? Because human nature is constant, perennialists believe that the education of a human being should be constant. We shouldn't be chasing the latest trends or teaching relevant skills that will be obsolete in 5 years, like how to use a typewriter or coding in Fortran. We should teach the things that never go obsolete. We should teach the great books. For a perennialist, the curriculum is a conversation with the greatest minds in history. You don't read Plato because he's old. You read him because he's smarter than you, and he's talking about things that matter right now. You read Shakespeare, Dante, Austen, and Einstein. You study the canon, the collection of works that have stood the test of time. In a perennialist classroom, you won't find textbooks. Textbooks are digested, watered-down summaries. You find the original sources. You sit in a seminar circle, the Socratic seminar, and you debate the text. The teacher is not a guide on the side. The teacher is a scholar who helps you grapple with these giant ideas. The goal here isn't job training. The goal is to cultivate the intellect. It is to make you a rational, moral, and culturally literate human being. If you can think clearly and understand the great ideas of history, you can learn any job you want later. If perennialism is the university seminar, essentialism is the no-nonsense elementary school. Essentialism was born in the 1930s as a direct, angry reaction to progressive education. When the progressives started talking about project-based learning and child-centered classrooms, the essentialists, led by a guy named William Bagley, slammed their hand on the table. They said, "This is getting soft. We are raising a generation of illiterates who can express themselves, but can't find France on a map or make change for $1. Essentialism is much more practical. They don't necessarily care if you read Plato. They care if you have the essential skills and knowledge to function in society. They believe there is a common core of knowledge that every American needs to know. You need to know how to read, write, and do math proficiently. You need to know the basic history of your country. You need to understand the scientific method. You need to know the difference between there, and there. The essentialist classroom is structured, disciplined, and teacher-centered. The teacher is the authority. They are the expert. Their job is to efficiently transmit this core knowledge to the student. There is a lot of drill, practice, and memorization. Why? Because you can't think critically about the Revolutionary War if you don't know who George Washington was or why the war started. You need the facts first. This is the philosophy of standards. When you hear politicians talk about raising the bar, rigor, or accountability, they are speaking the language of essentialism. Despite the differences between the high-minded perennialists and the practical essentialists, they share a set of core beliefs that define the conservative approach to schooling. 1. Human nature is flawed and needs structure. This is a big one. Progressives, especially the romantics like Rousseau, tend to believe that children are born naturally good and curious, and that if we just get out of their way, they will blossom like flowers. Conservatives say, "Have you met a child?" The conservative view, often rooted in religious tradition or just a grim realism, is that human beings are naturally prone to laziness, selfishness, and disorder. We are not born with self-discipline. We have to learn it. We are not born knowing how to be polite. We have to be taught. Therefore, the school must provide structure. It must have rules. It must have authority. A free classroom where kids do what they want isn't a garden, it's a jungle. The teacher's authority isn't about power tripping. It's about providing the necessary boundaries that make learning possible. This is why conservative schools emphasize character education, uniforms, and clear codes of conduct. They believe you are molding a soul, curbing the bad impulses and encouraging the good ones. 2. Truth is objective and universal. In a world that increasingly talks about my truth and your truth, the conservative puts their foot down. They believe that truth, with a capital T, exists. 2 + 2 = 4 is true everywhere for everyone. Shakespeare is a better writer than a random TikTok influencer. This is not just an opinion. It is an objective judgment of quality based on complexity, depth, and endurance. Certain moral virtues, courage, honesty, responsibility, are universally good. The school's job is not to let students construct their own reality. The school's job is to introduce students to the reality. We guide them toward the true, the good, and the beautiful. We don't apologize for saying that some things are just better or more important than others. 3. Cultural literacy is the ticket to freedom. One of the most modern and influential conservative thinkers is E.D. Hirsch. In the 1980s, he wrote a bombshell book called Cultural Literacy. Hirsch argued that the reason poor and minority children were struggling in reading wasn't that they couldn't decode the words. It was that they lacked the background knowledge that wealthy kids got at home. If you read a sentence like, "He met his Waterloo in the Senate hearings," you can read every word perfectly. But if you don't know who Napoleon is and what happened at Waterloo, you cannot understand the sentence. Hirsch argued that progressives were hurting the very kids they claimed to help by cutting content and focusing only on skills. He said you can't teach reading comprehension in a vacuum. You have to teach stuff. You have to teach history, science, literature, art, and idioms. For the conservative, this common knowledge is the glue that holds a diverse society together. If we all know the same stories, the same history, and the same metaphors, we can talk to each other. We can be a unified nation. If we stop teaching this common core, we fragment into tribes. 4. The past is a treasure, not a burden. Modern education often treats the past with suspicion. We look at history and see only oppression, bias, and error. We want to update everything to be modern and relevant. The conservative sees the past as a treasure chest. This is the concept of heritage. They believe we are standing on the shoulders of giants, the scientific discoveries, the great novels, the political institutions, like the Constitution. These are gifts we inherited. Education is an act of gratitude. We teach students about the founding of America not just to critique it, but to revere the incredible achievement of creating a democracy. We teach Newton and Galileo to honor the lineage of science. This doesn't mean we hide the ugly parts of history, but the tone is different. A progressive teaches history to show how much work we still have to do. A conservative teaches history to show how far we have come and to preserve the good things we have built.